Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life with Kyle. And today we got something big going on. We're going to be talking about what happens when capitalism fails. More specifically, we're going to be talking about how that's actually taking place today, right this moment, within our current economy and within our current government. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. I know the scenery is a little different here. I'm currently filming in my brother's studio. He's graciously provided me access to it so that we can film our stuff here as well. I guess that's one of the perks of working with him. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and get this rolling so we can get right into it, guys, because I got a lot to cover today. Google what kind of market the United States is. You'll quickly find that economists alike agree that America is a mixture of both capitalism and socialism. Capitalism is defined as an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. Of course, this only happens when times are good and economic activity is near its peak. But how do economists see America as socialistic? Well, society only ever likes to see the good around them. We're told to ignore and disregard the negative. But when you look at the opposite of capitalism and the example provided earlier for when economists view America as capitalistic, you will quickly see that when economic activity is at an all-time low and unemployment is at a high, socialism inevitably becomes the fallout of capitalism. One could theorize this is because of America's two-party system made up of Republicans and Democrats, but when one party controls everything, they will indeed try to eliminate the other to make operations flow as efficiently as possible, or at least what their party deems as efficient. Let's look at how this is happening right this moment within America's government from their most recent election. Democrats now control the House, Senate, and presidency. However, this is nothing new, but what is new is the massive amount of assets our government currently holds. 7.3 trillion worth, to be exact. With that kind of leverage, they could essentially do whatever they wanted. But how did we get there? What caused our government's balance sheet to balloon to $7.3 trillion? I've theorized a quantum financial system since the start of COVID. I've done nothing but literally no life my theory. Because of that, I've been able to gather immense amounts of data from watching COVID move through crypto, our financial system, and through our physical economy. This quantum financial system is based on a 3-in-1 system, meaning data from each system, cryptos, the stock market, and the physical economy, is quantified every time there is an event. For example, the day before news broke that Trump had COVID, cryptos had tanked more than they had in previous months. So applying my quantum theory, that meant something big was coming to the stock market and thus meant news within the physical economy. Sure enough, the very next day, Trump got COVID and the market fell. This same theory can be used to predict how COVID would have impacted our economy from when cryptos began declining in early February of 2020, as I believe they actually did, and it's why our government knew they had to act so swiftly within the financial system. Now, my theory still has some tweaking, and it isn't always accurate. It's challenging to quantify delta, and the time it takes from when cryptos indicate something to the stock market reacting to when feeling its effects in the physical economy. But during times of high uncertainty, it is better than nothing. What it does is it allows one to look at high-frequency cryptographic data, interpret how its events might, can, and do unfold in the financial system, and essentially act as a guide for future perspectives or outcomes in the physical economy, as well as the stock market. This is how I am gathering data, interpreting it, reaching a conclusion, and presenting it to you, the viewer. So with all that behind us, let's talk about that 7.3 trillion bubble within America's government and how the Federal Reserve knew COVID was going to impact our economy back in 2019. In October of 2019, the United States Federal Reserve began quantitative easing, a program that hadn't been used since the '08 financial crisis. When they announced such measures, it signaled to banks that something big was coming, and thus government intervention within the financial system was required, the start of socialism. Publicly traded companies have a fiduciary duty to maximize profits and returns to their shareholders. If the Federal Reserve is one of the largest shareholders of a corporation, and as of COVID, they were the 5th largest holder of US equities, then that company will more than likely do whatever that entity deems most profitable. One could see a conflict of interest arising, as the Fed literally has the power to increase or decrease asset prices via money printing, causing the markets to appear rigged. But our financial system must reflect our economy. So if our financial system is therefore rigged, then one could say that something somewhere in our physical economy is also being rigged. As the government began buying more and more assets from banks through the Fed's asset purchase program, an easement on the Volcker rule was needed to keep markets functioning and thus was implemented back in January of 2020. Any wise investor would have known by this point that something drastic was coming, as our government was now making risky and speculative investments. This was a signal flare for banks to prepare for an economic downturn, and thus in March of 2020, COVID struck our economy and ravaged our financial system. During that time, asset prices declined rapidly as banks sold everything they deemed AAA rated, to the Fed. This is where socialism really kicks in. Banks are willing to hold assets for the people when times are good, but the moment their foot catches fire, they'll call Uncle Sam to bail them out. The moral hazard everyone feared post-2008. But it's the fallout that comes back to haunt the American people. At the same time, while everyone was focused on the crashing stock market, reserve requirements, which is the amount of funds that a bank holds in reserve to ensure that it's able to meet liabilities in case of sudden withdrawals, were dropped to zero. This meant nobody could withdraw any cash even if they wanted to, and thus dawned our national coin shortage. This drastic measure of bringing reserve requirements to zero was to prevent a run on the banks due to their overexposure within the market, and was a tool used by the central bank to increase money supply in the economy and influence interest rates. However, banks still had access to their money via credit, and with the world seeming to come to an end, they invested it in the one place where it wouldn't exist, so that the inflation or declination of the dollar wouldn't harm their precious profits. Crypto. So you may be asking yourself, how could every bank know exactly what to do so that none would go under and that a new system could be implemented and we could divert this bubble and society could live on? Let me introduce you to Operation Warp Speed. You may be familiar with the vaccine version of this initiative, but let me tell you about the financial side of this operation. The same day Bitcoin bottomed, March 11th, 2020, Donald Trump met with every big national bank in America. If you wanted to get our economy back online as quickly as possible and bring it back better than it was before, an entirely new financial system would have to be developed, and every bank would have to know precisely how to execute it so it would be brought online simultaneously via a large adoption of this new system. If I had to speculate what occurred behind closed doors, it would be that the bankers discussed taking their financial system to its digital form, i.e. adopting cryptocurrencies. The stock market reacted to this news on March 20th, 2020, when it finally reached a bottom. However, society wasn't made aware of this until May 17th of 2020, when Fed Chair Jay Powell told the people via a 60 Minutes interview that they were minting money digitally. Even still, not many people picked up on the message he was trying to convey. But with Bitcoin currently hovering around $40,000, I bet they are aware of its price, but not how it got there. Had they had access to a quantum financial system, they would have known to buy some, just like the banks did and as I did when Bitcoin was just below $7,000. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't know then what I do know now, nor did I know much about a QFS at all. All I knew was that I had to screenshot this price of Bitcoin because it was the start of something massive, and I wanted evidence of that what I knew from watching everything unfold was going to have a life-changing impact. In June of 2019, the US Federal Reserve released a statement about the use of digital currencies and their benefits as well as their risks. They concluded that a Federal Reserve digital coin could help remedy many of those issues, but widespread adoption of crypto was the main underlying issue. And as you've guessed, COVID gave them just the reason for widespread adoption of such a system as described in conjunction with the data earlier. COVID gave rise to a cashless economy and created a national coin shortage. This forced people to use credit, even digital payments such as Apple Pay. My theory is the credit that our economy is now running on is the USDT, or the digital form of our dollar. Just as crypto doesn't physically exist, neither does the credit in which we spend in our economy. That is what got us out of the '08 financial crisis, yet credit is ultimately what caused the COVID crash, and crypto is how they will expand the bubble while pushing society into the future, as I believe cryptos were designed as a fail-safe should the credit system ever fail. If you look at the USDT in relation to Bitcoin, you can clearly see inflation has and is hitting the digital markets. My theory is still leading me to question if we will feel those repercussions of digital inflation in the physical economy, but I do believe that quantum inflation might occur, meaning it will impact each individual prospectively, i.e. if they save for the future, then their money will just decline the more they save over time via negative interest rates. I say this because it will be the ultimate way for people to spend their money and in return stimulate an economy. If I am right, then quantum inflation will ultimately skyrocket demand for highly sought after items. It would be like everyone only wanting an iPhone because they can afford it, and saving money by buying a cheaper, more similar product wouldn't matter because the more money they hold just ends up costing them more in the future. Nothing exists until one person convinces society that it does. Just as money doesn't exist, only the idea that society needs money to operate. With digital currencies, quantum economics, or the study of an individual, can be observed. Their outcome can be determined and recorded over time via blockchain technology. So you may be asking yourself, what do I do with my money now? How does one prepare for an entirely new financial system? Well, that's what this channel is designed to help you with. See, we can only accurately know what to do with our money the moment we decide to do something with it. If society adopts a quantum financial system, then everyone at any point in time would know exactly what they want to spend, invest, or do with their money without any hesitation or second thought. It's the ultimate form of efficiency and will propel humanity into the future we all know to be true. It's just the path in which society takes that will dictate the time factor of its implementation. Governments around the world must adopt a similar system so that everyone and everything can become operational again. And with this craziest thing seeming in America right now, the time factor is still undetermined. So for now, enjoy life. Don't worry about politics. Don't worry about the news. Just trust God. That's the best thing I can tell you right now. Everything will occur exactly when it's supposed to, and trying to rush the future will only cause chaos. Society appears fragile because we're in a state of change. We're adopting a new president, a new financial system, and there is tremendous divide on both sides of the aisle, not to mention everyone's own opinion of COVID. It's a recipe for disaster, and I believe it's why we are transitioning to a quantum financial system, because it will be the only thing capable of handling a collapse of the social fabric we once knew pre-COVID. I hope this has been as eye-opening to you as it has been for me to study and theorize. If you have any questions or are curious about other things within the current financial system, let me know in the comments below, and please like this video so that we can surround ourselves with more like-minded individuals. My name is Kyle, and thanks for taking a peek into the future of a quantum financial system.